Hey everyone, welcome to another Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the infamous Great Chicago Fire of 1871, and we're going to separate the historical facts from the absolute folklore that still surrounds it today. I mean, we've all heard the stories, right? But what actually happens when one of America's fastest-growing cities is literally reduced to ashes in just a matter of days? Let's find out. All right, let's kick things off with a question literally everyone thinks they know the answer to. Did Catherine O'Leary's cow really start the Great Chicago Fire? It's easily one of the most famous legends in American history, right? You know the image. It's burned into our collective memory. A clumsy cow, a kicked-over lantern, and suddenly the whole city is up in flames. But how much of that is actually true?
Well, that brings us to part one, the O'Leary cow myth.
To really get to the bottom of this disaster, we have to look at the legendary tale of the O'Leary barn on DeKoven Street. And the popular legend of that clumsy cow? It's a massive contrast to reality. Because the truth is, the official cause of the fire remains a total mystery even today. There are quite a few other theories out there. For instance, a neighbor named Pegleg Sullivan might have accidentally ignited some hay while trying to steal milk. Or maybe a group of neighborhood boys knocked over a lantern during a craps game in the alley. But Catherine O'Leary, she was just the perfect scapegoat. She was a poor Irish Catholic immigrant, and at that time, Chicago had some incredibly intense anti-Irish and anti-Catholic sentiments going on. The whole cow story was actually totally fabricated by a reporter, but it stuck anyway simply because it perfectly fit the prejudices of the era.
Moving on to part two, a recipe for disaster. So, the most crucial thing to understand here isn't exactly how the fire sparked, but the fact that Chicago was basically a giant tinderbox just waiting for a match. Over 2/3 of the city's buildings used what's called balloon frame wooden construction, and on top of that, highly combustible tar or shingle roofs. I mean, even the sidewalks and a ton of the roads were made entirely out of wood. Now add in a brutal, severe drought. We're talking only 1 single inch of rain over 3 entire months. Throw in some strong southwest winds to whip up the embers and, well, it gets worse. Their primary line of defense was a tiny, completely exhausted 185-man fire department equipped with just 17 horse-drawn pumpers. And these guys had already been fighting multiple fires all week. So yeah, Chicago was practically begging to burn. Which leads us to part 3, the unstoppable inferno. Once those flames really took hold on October 8th, they morphed into an absolute unstoppable nightmare. Firefighters initially hoped the Chicago River would act as a natural fire break, right? But they totally didn't account for a horrifying meteorological phenomenon known as a fire whirl. Essentially, as the intense heat rises, it hits the cooler air above and starts to spin. This creates an effect that is literally like a flaming tornado. These fire whirls hurled burning chunks of debris high into the air and across massive distances, easily just leaping right over the river like it wasn't even there. The sheer speed of the destruction is hard to wrap your head around. The fire sparked around 8:30 p.m. on October 8th, and it moved incredibly fast. By midnight, those fire whirls we just talked about were blowing flaming debris all the way across the south branch of the river. Then, at 2:30 a.m. on the 9th, the massive courthouse cupola collapsed, and its great bell crashed to the ground with a sound people heard over a mile away. The fire just mercilessly marched across the river again, ultimately destroying the city's waterworks. This cut off the water mains, leaving Chicago 100% defenseless. It honestly wasn't until late the next evening, October 9th, that rain finally started to fall, helping to put out the flames only after they had basically burned themselves out. All right, part 4, ashes and aftermath. So, the rain finally brought an end to the flames. But once that smoke cleared and the smoldering ruins cooled down, the unbelievable scale of the human tragedy was laid bare. 100,000, anywhere from 90,000 to 100,000 residents were left instantly homeless. To put that into perspective, that was roughly 28% of the city's entire population at the time. Over a quarter of Chicago lost absolutely everything they owned overnight. And while the official death toll is estimated to be around 300, a lot of historians think it was likely way higher, mainly because the coroners speculated some victims were just completely incinerated by the intense heat. The physical and economic toll was just as staggering. The fire completely leveled 17,500 buildings across an area roughly 4 miles long. This caused $222 million in property damage. And keep in mind, that's in 1871 money. That was a full 1/3 of the entire city's total valuation, just wiped off the map in a matter of hours. But, this immense tragedy did spark a truly incredible global response. Rival cities and completely foreign nations didn't even hesitate to step up. New York City sent $450,000, plus a ton of clothing and provisions. St. Louis chipped in $300,000. And all the way across the Atlantic, the Common Council of London and private British citizens sent massive monetary donations. The UK even proposed sending over 8,000 volumes of books. This global outpouring of support absolutely flooded Chicago with the vital supplies they needed to just survive those immediate chaotic days. And that brings us to Part 5, Rising from the Ashes. Under temporary martial law enforced by General Philip Sheridan, order was restored pretty quickly. And Chicago didn't just rebuild. They used this as an opportunity to lay the groundwork for a massive, modernized rebirth. You see, the fire really forced America to look in the mirror regarding its rapid industrialization and, frankly, terrible urban planning. Prominent landscape architect Frederick Law Olmsted heavily critiqued the city's pre-fire building practices. He basically said Chicago's obsession with building super fast and showing off led to some fatal structural flaws. As he put it, their walls were thin and were overweighted with gross and coarse misornamentation. This harsh realization spurred insurance executives to step in and force Chicago to completely rewrite its fire codes. They started rebuilding almost immediately, but this time they were held to much higher, fireproof standards using actual safe materials. Now, what's really fascinating here is that it wasn't just physical architecture that rose from the ashes. Cultural infrastructure blossomed too. Remember that proposed book donation from the United Kingdom we mentioned a minute ago? Well, that massive donation of over 8,000 volumes led directly to the establishment of the very first free Chicago Public Library in 1872. Before the fire, libraries in Chicago were entirely private. You actually had to pay membership fees to use them. So out of this immense, tragic destruction, a permanent public good was born. And in a really satisfying historic correction, 126 years later, in 1997, the Chicago City Council formally exonerated Catherine O'Leary and her famous cow of any responsibility for the Great Fire. Following some dedicated research by a historian, they officially put that xenophobic myth to rest, finally acknowledging that she had been unfairly blamed for over a century. The Great Chicago Fire forced a booming metropolis to confront its dangerous flaws, rewrite its laws, and build a modern, fire-safe future. Honestly, it took the near-total destruction of the city to wake people up to the literal hazards they were living with every single day. Which leaves us with a provocative thought to end on for this explainer. Chicago learned its lesson the hard way. What hidden vulnerabilities is your own city ignoring today? Thanks so much for joining me, and I hope this gave you a brand new perspective on a piece of history you thought you knew.